I am Greg Hunter. This is USAWatchdog.com's weekly news wrap up for Friday, January 26, 2018, the WNW 319. The mainstream media has finally started to cover the giant debacle in Washington, D.C. with the Obama administration, DOJ, and FBI. Just unbelievable. The revelations coming out that they exonerated Hillary Clinton before an investigation, that everybody in the DOJ and FBI is in on it. There's all kinds of text messages that have come out to back all this stuff up. There's just informants that are coming forward. There's the fact that Hillary Clinton paid $12 million for this dossier to trash Donald Trump. None of it's true. The FBI and DOJ apparently have used this to get a FISA warrant to spy on Donald Trump and his incoming administration. Some believe they had exonerated one candidate and they used the trash and nasty, untrue information from her, paid for by her, and then they used it and took it to a FISA court and got warrants. And but that's not the story the MSM, the mainstream media, is propelling. Here's the headline that MSNBC: FBI secret society is a dangerous conspiracy theory. There is a informant that Senator Ron Johnson has, and I'll read that in a minute, that says, yeah, they met off-site and they've used the term secret society in text messages. And they also lost, and I'll get to this too, 50,000 emails or text messages over 5 months between two main characters in this little melodrama and this outrageous act of sedition and treason. But anyway, I digress. So that's their headline. MSNBC's Morning Joe has for 2 straight days dismissed the growing scandal over the anti-Trump texts between two former FBI agents as nothing more than a conspiracy theory. The wall of evidence is overwhelming. I mean, even the Department of Justice, Jeff Sessions, is warning that you shouldn't release this memo that I'm going to talk about in a minute that names the top people. And it's a 4-page memo, and there's all kinds of backup information and backup evidence of widespread corruption in the Department of Justice, the FBI, the Clinton campaign, the Obama administration. This is off the charts, folks. Again, this makes Watergate look like a squirt gun fight, but the mainstream media just can't come to grips with it. Comey, Rosenstein, McCabe, all named in FISA memo. First leak reveals, that was Zero Hedge's headline. But here's the Daily Beast's headline. Devin Nunes, who's just running this up in the House, he's basically running this in the House. Anti-FBI memo names James Comey, Rod, who is the head of the FBI before he was fired, Rod Rosenstein, who is the number 2 at the Justice Department, who hired Robert Mueller, and Andrew McCabe, who's the number 2 at the FBI. Unbelievable. Unbelievable you have this kind of corruption at this level. Now, listen, the rank and file at the DOJ and the FBI likely don't have anything to do with this, and they couldn't stop it anyway if their bosses are ordering to do stuff. But likely they don't have anything to do with it, but some of them could. Now, if you go to the USA Today, the Nation's News, they're going to change it to the Nation's Propaganda, because all week long I'm looking for something, some story, some story. Nope. You have a reprint from the Washington Post. We're back to this. Mueller seeks to question Trump. I mean, his investigation was started by evidence from a phony dossier used to get FISA warrants, wiretaps, just as Donald Trump said. This is how his whole investigation started. His whole investigation is based on it, and yet the mainstream media lies by omission. And what do they commit? Let's just refresh this definition here of propaganda. It's from the Oxford Dictionaries. Information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. Well, the cause was exonerating Hillary Clinton so she could stay in the race and be elected president. That didn't happen. The other cause was trying to destroy Donald Trump. Don't take my word for it. Listen to famed former federal prosecutor Joe diGenova. And here's what he says. This is the headline. Former federal prosecutor just made explosive charge against DOJ for framing Donald Trump. Joe diGenova, who worked in Washington, D.C., worked on big cases, drugs, money laundering, intelligence, national security cases, a huge guy. And he says that the Obama DOJ was in the process of basically, and the holdovers there basically were framing Donald Trump and his administration. And then he goes on, DOJ officials conducted a fake criminal investigation of Hillary Clinton. People who were senior career civil servants violated the law. And that's with not just Hillary Clinton, but this framing of Donald Trump. Absolutely outrageous. This is, and the evidence, the mountain of evidence, the text messages, the phony dossier, these are all real things, folks. This is that the mainstream media would like to paint this as just, oh, those Republicans are at it again. They're just making up conspiracy theories. No, there actually was a real conspiracy. It was widespread. It was, I think, treason. There was certainly obstruction of justice and fraud and all kinds of violations of the law. But here we go. Congress zeroes in on secret society of FBI, DOJ, prosecutors, federal judges. This is pretty big, folks, and D.C. elite trying to take down Trump. This is the True Pundit, but this comes from McCabe and others in the Washington, D.C. FBI HQ may have been gathering in person and online to map out a survival strategy at the FBI, according to Senator Ron Johnson. Now, this is a charge with Ron Johnson, who I heard him say this today. I looked it up. I double-sourced this. This is according to this guy, Senator Ron Johnson, the chair of Homeland Security, the Homeland Security Committee in the Senate. He also has an inside whistleblower that he says confirmed all this. That they were having secret meetings to figure out a strategy to save their bacon. And yet the mainstream media keeps coming up with, oh, they're just wild conspiracy theories. You're impugning the integrity of the FBI. And even Jeff Sessions says he doesn't want some of this stuff released because it could destroy the FBI. But maybe parts of the FBI need to be destroyed. And incidentally, the Department of Justice does not oversee Congress. Congress oversees the Department of Justice. It is absolutely unreal, and we have yet, I just want to throw this in as a side note, we have yet to hear any testimony from, remember that insider that was working on Uranium One and had tons of evidence and still does, tons of evidence of espionage, money laundering, extortion by Russian agents, and Mueller had him as a deep undercover guy for 6 years, and yet Robert Mueller, the then director of the FBI, let the Uranium One deal fall into Russian hands. It was a company, but the company could be Campbell Soup or XYZ. There's no independent uranium company in Russia. It's the Russian government. Mueller, the guy that's heading up this witch hunt that with Donald Trump, absolutely outrageous. They haven't gotten one thing on him. He's telling Robert Mueller that he's going to testify under oath. Absolutely outrageous. He fired James Comey. That's his constitutional right to fire him. He talked to the Russians. Yes, everybody talks to, incoming administration talks to Russia. They're a nuclear armed country. There's nothing illegal about that. There's not. And many legal scholars will back me up on that. It's just absolutely outrageous that this guy's running an investigation started with a fraudulent dossier paid for by another candidate, by the opposing candidate. And yet the mainstream media just cannot report that. This is what's going to kill them off. I'm going to make another prediction. You know, they've had all these massive layoffs, right? We're going to have another round of massive layoffs after this pie in the face gets firmly planted in the faces of the New York Times, the Washington Post, the CNN, the very fake news, who I used to work for, ABC, NBC, CBS. These people are going to be creamed for running this false narrative and not doing basic reporting and asking and being a fair arbiter of the truth and having just a healthy dose of skepticism after, you know, this thing started in July of 2016, a Mueller investigation not that long, but nothing, no collusion. They've got some bogus, perjury trap with General Michael Flynn, with I think is a national disgrace. He's got one of the highest security clearance ever. And then you got something with Paul Manafort. None of this stuff have anything to do with collusion with Russia. Absolutely outrageous. With an extremely biased Robert Mueller and all of his crew of extremely biased people, because they can't be fair, because any fair-minded people would say, wow, this is a scam, like Joe DeGeneres said, hey, they're framing Donald Trump. And then we have, 5 months of missing text messages that were just found. That the FBI, we lost them. We just lost some data that could finger a lot of people with some criminal activity. Incidentally, some of the Congressman Getz in Florida, is saying that that, listen, there's a lot of high-ranking people should go to jail. And this has been on the air quotes. This isn't some crazy, alt media conspiracy theory. These guys are making public statements all over the place. Here's another one that they won't cover. DOJ receives missing text messages between anti-Trump FBI agent Strzok, who was a top intel agent for the FBI, incidentally, and Page is Paramore. This is Fox News. More than 50,000 texts exchanged between FBI officials and Strzok and Page. 50,000 texts over about a little more than 5 months, around 5 months, exchanged between the FBI officials and Strzok and Page. And it's damning. It shows bias. It shows these guys committed crime, obstruction of justice, and it implicates some of the top people. And the Democrats are fighting this tooth and nail, like we're too stupid to figure out this massive crime. And there's actually written backup in their own hands and own words that show they basically committed crimes and did phony investigations on both ends of the spectrum. They did a phony investigation exonerating Hillary Clinton. They did a phony investigation trying to frame Donald Trump and his people. I mean, the house needs to be cleaned. This is absolutely outrageous. They're not just missing this. They're missing it because they want to miss it. They're lying by omission, the mainstream media. The lying by omission. They're propaganda machines, and I'm so sorry to tell you this, but they are. Donald Trump is over in Davos, Switzerland, and he's doing great. And everybody's flocking to meet him. And listen, with the year he had, considering that the deep state was against him, that the media was against him, the Democrats were against him, and many members of his own party were against him, and he still had the year he had. Pretty impressive, pretty incredible. And George Soros is outrunning his yapper. Donald Trump is hurting him, and George Soros is afraid of him because here this headline comes out. George Soros says the Trump administration is a danger to the world. No, Georgie. No, George, he's a danger to you and your crony globalists. That's who Donald Trump is a danger to. He goes over to Davos and he's pushing hey, listen, I'm serious about this. It's America first. Please come to America and do business. He's conducting business meetings in Davos to drum up business and sell America first. And get people to come over to America. Hey, listen, we just cut our taxes. Hey, listen, we just cut our regulations. Come to America and build plants and build things so we can create wealth by manufacturing again. And not create wealth by, $8 an hour jobs at Taco Bell. Balluminati. Or McDonald's. They're all fine establishments, but it's not like, putting together an F-16. One thing that's going to be a big sticking point, and it's going to probably make a lot of people mad, and this is from Breitbart. White House plan, big amnesty now, nothing for Americans until 2017. Now, this is not a done deal, folks, and I hope this isn't true, but let's just read along here. President Donald Trump's new framework amnesty plan would provide citizenship to at least 1.8 million illegals, but would not allow any beneficial reduction in cheap labor immigration until 2027. That's 10 years, folks. But the loopholes are huge, and those loopholes will flood the labor market for another decade, so helping Wall Street by, cooling the current worker shortage, which is now raising America's wages. And that's been the problem with the middle class. This flood of illegals, many of them are on welfare immediately. They start hatching babies and they go right to welfare. There should be a real, listen, if they get their 1.8 million people, then the wall money gets immediately funded. They want $25 billion for the wall. But there's all kinds of problems with this whole deal. Even there's some Republicans that really don't want the wall. They want open borders. They want they want to pay off the people that buy them off. They don't want to do anything for you, the American people. These are a bunch of weasels. I mean, you can't have open borders, and then what the Democrats want to have is a welfare society. You can't have it. The country would be broke in 3 years. It's absolutely outrageous. Meanwhile, as they're trying to keep all this together, the dollar hits fresh 3-year lows after Mnuchin. Cheers a week of Greenback. He said he came out and said it's unbelievable. Gregory Mannarino calls me. He says, "Did you hear what Mnuchin just said, the Treasury Secretary?" He says we're no longer going to have the strong dollar policy. We're going to have the stable dollar policy. I Mannarino on the phone. I said, stable at what level? At 70 on the USDX, at 50 on the USDX. Stable policy. What's stable? And then Mannarino says, Greg, he said, do me a favor. Put up this chart and hold it up here and put your hand over this and then say, hey, here's a chart of a stock. Let's just call this a stock. Well, would you buy this stock after this is a chart of 1 year of this stock? And then he says, then reveal it and show it's the U.S. dollar and it's in free fall. And it's in the overnights here on Thursday to Friday, it was 89.33. It got down to 88. On the U.S. dollar index. It was, just so you know how big of a drop that is, this is the world's reserve currency, people, and at the beginning of 2017, it was 103 on the U.S. dollar index, and this has gone down 14 points in about a year. That's a big drop, especially for a currency as widely used as the U.S. dollar. Can inflation be far behind? Now, Donald Trump comes out the next day after Mnuchin says we go from a strong dollar policy to a stable dollar policy, and Donald Trump says, well, the economy is going to get better, and it is getting better. I don't want to poo-poo that. It is getting better, but we have two parallels here that we're working, and one of them is the economy you and I live in, okay, and work in. And yes, people got bonuses. They're getting 1,000. More companies are announcing these $1,000 bonuses. Taxes are being cut, and then we have the debt parallel. And we have more debt in the world, about $70 trillion more than we had in 2008. And what we had in 2008 was a debt problem. What do we do to fix it? Well, we put in more debt into the global economy. And same thing with the national debt. I mean, we had a $10 trillion debt. Now we have a $20 trillion deficit. And it's doubled. So, they're trying to keep rates down. As I told you last week, Mannarino says, you can't have it both ways. You can't buy all these bonds to suppress interest rates and keep them from jumping up. And then you can't have a strong dollar. Something's got to give. Well, it looks like the dollar's giving. I do have, and I want to tell you this, Mark Taylor, he's the guy that wrote this book, The Trump Prophecies. For a long time before he may be one of the first people to say, hey, Donald Trump's going to be elected president. All of his Trump prophecies are on his swordrescue.com website. This book is fascinating, the backstory of his prophecies, and also the prophecies, all of them that he did, not the very newest one, but a lot of them that he did. They're amazing. It's absolutely amazing to read these. He talked about military tribunals, and did you understand how big the problem was that I was talking about with the Department of Justice and the FBI and the Obama administration and the crazy things they did and how many top people that involved? And then you just add in, this executive order. We're talking about blocking property. This is Steve Mnuchin would be involved in this, Treasury Secretary. Blocking property of persons involved in serious human rights abuse or corruption, like maybe taking bribes through a global charity fraud. Hello, Clinton Foundation. There is this absolutely unbelievable amount of swamp, corruption, graft, law breaking. It's absolutely unbelievable. And I talked to Mark Taylor. He's not a doctor. He's a former firefighter. He's a blue collar guy like me. I talked to Mark Taylor about what's coming, and he says, lots of arrests. Things could get really destabilized, and we have to pray that it doesn't. But things, parts of government can go down. Listen, you'll want to watch the interview. It's the early Sunday release. It's Mark Taylor. He's the co-author of the Trump prophecies. You won't want to miss it. It's probably one of his best interviews ever. He's really a wonderful guy, and I think he's the real deal, Holyfield. Early Sunday release. Mark Taylor, the firefighter that predicted Donald Trump would be president, and also predicted, and also has some new predictions, new prophecies. Predicted there'd be military tribunals. Aren't we on the edge of military tribunals right now? Aren't we on the edge of that? I mean, this executive order, just so you know, Donald Trump called it a national emergency, which means he can use the military. So his team is the Pentagon and him and the intelligence of the Pentagon. This was on December 21st, 2017. Said it was a national emergency, and the people that were, doing this corruption and human rights abuses could take down the financial system. National emergency. So big things are happening, even though the mainstream media wants you to believe their big things are not happening. They are happening. And I used to work in their houses. I know how to source a story. NFL, boy, they just keep getting it, don't they? They took a wonderful American pastime that was probably probably overtook baseball as America's pastime, and they took it and they turned it into a political thought-shaping machine, the NFL. Here we have NFL establishes owner-player committee on social justice. Again, I've told you, social justice, this is Marxism. Kaepernick's heroes are Che Rivera. He's a communist. He's a Marxist. Period. The end. The NFL has established a player-owner committee focusing on social and racial justice initiatives that Commissioner Roger Goodell cautions is just a start with lots of work ahead. Hey, Roger Goodell, why don't you school some people on the absolutely overarching, out-of-whack crime rate relative to the size of its population, of the black population, the murder rate and the crime rate of the black population. Martin Luther King talked about that. That was the worst thing that ever happened to black people, was the loss of Martin Luther King. Leadership wants to blame the cops. Leadership in the African-American community and the social justice people like Roger Goodell want you to believe that the police are hunting down black men and executing them. That's a lie. How about let's talk about the 70 or more percent of black babies born to mothers without husbands, which guarantees poverty and a life of and a very tough life. Let's focus on that, but nope. The leadership of the Democratic Party, the leadership of the African American community, they want to concentrate on social justice, and they want to concentrate on the cops, their police brutality. They don't want to look in the mirror, and nobody wants to tell them to look in the mirror. It's just absolutely outrageous that there are people suing the NFL for their money back because they bought tickets to a sporting event, not a social justice, thought-shaping, Marxist-producing event. And then you look at this, where the NFL blocks Veterans Group and Vets, Please Stand, blocks Veterans Group and Vets, Please Stand Super Bowl ad. It was a $30,000 text, ad. And here's what they came up with. This is One American News, OAN 125-18. The Super Bowl never has been a place for advertising that could be considered by some as a political statement. This is Brian McCarthy at the NFL. It never has been a place for advertising that could be considered by some as a political statement. Boy, that's rich and hypocritical, while they're taking a knee for the social justice matters. The Super Bowl's coming up, folks. I'm not watching it. And I'm just going to give you this here. Do not watch Super Bowl. It has turned into a Marxist tool for Communist and Democrat Party. That's what it is. Let's call it what it is. Social justice, Marxism, communism, anti-constitutional, anti-freedom, anti-American. That's what social justice is. The progressives, no, let's call them what they are. Marxists, communists, enemies of freedom and the Constitution. Let's call it what it is. Planned Parenthood, no. Planned Abortionhood, they just do abortions, folks. They're not planning for people to have families. They're planning for people to kill their babies in their families. And finally, I'll tell you where I got this idea from. I got it from Glenn Beck. And he tap danced on this issue. And I was like, Yahoo, bravo. You know, this whole Me Too, Harvey Weinstein, and we're going to wear black dresses, and time's up, and you know, we're had it, we're speaking out. That junk, garbage. I mean, no woman ought to be sexually assaulted. But, you know, the industry as a whole, they're a bunch of weasels. How do I know that? Well, look at one of the nominees for Best Picture, 2018 Academy Awards. Yes, Call Me By Your Name. Here's what was written up in the Washington Post. Among the best movies of the year, Washington Post, with two young men about 7 years apart in age, gravitating toward one another as friends and eventually more. Well, one of the boys is 17 years old, and that qualifies for statutory rape. They're gravitating towards one another as friends and eventually more. You mean like raping of a underage minor by a man 7 years older than him? More? And they're talking about hashtag Me Too. Let's hashtag black dresses. Hashtag time's up. And this is what they're going to consider for a national award for Best Picture. Basically, a guy that is having sex with an underage minor. Oh, it's in Italy, but that's okay. They're just more progressive over there. It's absolutely outrageous, folks. It really, and basically that was with some of mine added in, most of Glenn Beck's skit. Bravo, Glenn Beck. That was a winner. Listen, folks, one other thing I want to tell you about Mark Taylor, and I get into this pretty deeply, and you really should watch this interview. And I'm not going to give it away, but he is really down on the fear mongering. And, you know, I say fear not at the end of every newscast. And I listen, I've been guilty of being too fearful. Okay. I do think something has to be done with the debt, and that's not going to go well for a lot of people. But eventually it'll make the dollar stronger. That's one of his prophecies too, Mark Taylor's. But he says, listen, fear robs you. Don't be fearful. And he makes a big deal out of it that you should not be fearful, because that's what the Illuminati, the Luciferians, Satan, the New World Order, that's what they want. They want you paralyzed by fear. They want you paralyzed where you won't speak up. That's what they want. Don't fall for it. Don't be PC. Speak out. Don't let them shut you up. Fear not. Prepare yourself mentally, physically, above all spiritually. Fear not. God the Father and the Son, Jesus Christ, are firmly in control. Thank you for supporting USAWatchdog.com with your comments and your donations. That helps us out.